We're less than 50 days away from the start of college football season, and we have a lot to cover. The first of 68 Power Four teams that we are doing for our game by game predictions. And we're going to start off with the SEC and the Alabama Crimson Tide as they look to return to the college football playoff for the second time under Kalen DeBoer. Is it rebuild or is it building upon a fantastic season last year? These are my game-by-game predictions for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Hello, everyone. I'm Lucas Hill here of the Southern Sports Scene. Make sure you all do us a favor and hit the like, share, and subscribe button down below. Turn on the bell notifications so that you are notified every time we go live, posting a video or posting a new short on the Southern Sports Scene. Every live show brought to you by our good friends at Frost Buddy. Going over to frostbuddy.com. Use the promo code SSS15 to get 15% off your first purchase. That is code SSS15 to get 15% off your first purchase. We also want to thank our friends and partners over at Chike Nutrition. 20 grams of protein, 1 gram of fat, and 1 gram of sugar in every healthy, hearty cup of Chike Nutrition. Also, thank you to our friends at Buzzer for allowing us to use their platform to put all of our videos on the Southern Sports Scene and all episodes of the show on their app. Download the Buzzer app today. See if you can become a verified creator today. Let's look at Alabama's schedule for 2026. You start off the year, pretty interesting game against East Carolina, a team that is coming off of a 9-win season, beat Pitt in the Military Bowl last season, but this is an East Carolina team that lost a lot in the 2025 offseason. This is a team that is going to be in a very poor position. Blake Harrell, listen, I think he's one of the better G6 coaches out there, but you lose John David Baker, who's now the co-offensive coordinator, or he's now the full-time offensive coordinator over at Ole Miss. I think East Carolina is going to be in for kind of a rebuild year, but going on the road to Bama is not really going to help their case. I think Bama gets their offensive identity established early on against East Carolina, and we get a preview of what it looks like with Austin Mack as the starting quarterback, or whether it be Keelan Russell as the starting quarterback. We've yet to see. Next week, going to Kroger Field to play Kentucky. This is an interesting game to me. I've had this circled, and I'm very curious to see how Kentucky performs this year. The biggest thing for them is, can they stay healthy? This is a roster with guys like C.J. Baxter, the former number 1 overall running back in the class of 2023 on the roster. You added some depth at wide receiver. Defensively, I think you will be really good. You'll rank in the middle of the pack when it comes to that part of the SEC. But I think with Bama going to Kentucky, I am not sure what Vegas has the line at the moment. But I would imagine that it's somewhere around the 14 or 15 point odds. Right now, looking at this one, the odds right now, according to the Action Network, there's no odds right now, but it is projected to be around 11.5 or 12.5, which is a very light spread considering where Alabama has been historically against Kentucky. But this is a very sneaky Kentucky team that I think could pull an upset here. But eventually, I think Alabama does manage to pull away with a big victory there. That'll establish themselves. Week 3, back home against Florida State. This was a Seminole team that obviously gave Bama struggles this past year in the opening game of the year. No Tommy Castellanos. Ashton Daniels, I don't know what he's going to look like in this Florida State offense. There's a lot of question marks. The biggest thing, though, I think the back 7 is going to be able to limit Deuce Robinson for the most part. They're going to focus on him. The ground game really isn't going to be much to look out for. I think the line of scrimmage is going to be owned by Bama in this one. I think this should be a solid win for them. South Carolina at home, week 4. I definitely have South Carolina on upset alert in this one. I would not be surprised if they do pull off the upset, but I also understand that South Carolina is also going into a season where it's make or break for them. If Bama wins this football game, it's based on the fact that they were the more physical team up front. South Carolina revamped their entire offensive line. They lost a lot of pieces that were on their receiving core to the transfer portal, but do have a lot of young pieces coming back. I think Bama, at the end of the day, they just have a little bit more firepower on the offensive side of the ball. It's going to be another tight game, man, but this is definitely a sleeper early on in September. This is an interesting schedule that Alabama has. But I do think they pull off the victory. I think the crowd at Bryant-Denny is going to feed off of that energy, and I think that Bama's defense is going to be able to limit Lenore's Sellers. Week 5 at Mississippi State, playing Kamario Taylor and the Cowbells. I think this game, too, is going to be closer than we expect. I do, however, expect Bama to take care of business by double digits. I think it's going to be closer than we think in the first half of the game. Alabama's going to be able to create a couple of turnovers early on, and they squeak by with a victory against Mississippi State to get to 5-0 on the season. Georgia at home. This is the game that everybody's going to be paying attention to. I expect this to be a top 10 matchup. I think Bama's going to start off outside the top 15, maybe outside the top 20. August 17th, so a month from now, is when the AP poll is going to release their preseason rankings. Of course, everybody is going to be pissed off about that one. I have Georgia going into Bryant-Denny. And Bama's going to have a couple close wins. They went on the road to Kentucky and got a close victory, and it wasn't really a good coverage win. I think that Kentucky is able to cover the 11.5 or 12.5 point spread, depending on what happens against East Carolina. The South Carolina game, another tight one, down to the wire. Mississippi State, I would expect them to give them some trouble early on. I think Georgia goes into Bryant-Denny. I think Kirby Smart finally takes over Bryant-Denny Stadium, a stadium that he has struggled to win in, a team that he has struggled to beat. Guys, Georgia has only beaten Bama one other time. One time in this long-standing matchup between the two teams. Look, there's been a lot of things that we have been expecting. They just beat them this past year. Look, Georgia's got to be able to, or really, they've only beaten them one other time in the regular season, or three since 2007. Bama has owned the last couple of meetings in Athens, in Tuscaloosa. I have Georgia winning this one in overtime. I think that this ends up being an overtime game. I think this ends up being a very close matchup. I think Georgia, though, with the experience that they bring back, remember this, Alabama's going to have to revamp their entire offensive line that really took a beating this past year. But can they revamp under Adrian Clem? I think Georgia's front four is going to be able to get the better of them. I think the dynamic factor that Nate Frazier brings to your offense is going to play a factor. Georgia pulls off the victory in Tuscaloosa on the road. How does Bama respond? They go to Tennessee. Tennessee, it is hard to win in Neyland. And I don't know whether or not Tennessee is going to be that team or not. But it just seems like every other year, Tennessee just does something in Neyland Stadium. And they just make it difficult for a team like Alabama to win. You go back and look at what happened in 2024, 2 years ago, when Bama arguably played it's a pretty turnover-laden game against Tennessee. Does the same happen today? Bama has not beaten Tennessee at Neyland since 2020. They haven't beaten Josh Heupel as a head coach. They haven't beaten Josh Heupel at home or on the road ever. Is this the year that Kalen DeBoer gets the monkey off his back? I don't know. I don't think it will. Tennessee, every other year, just happens to go on a run. I think this is one of the few games where I think that Tennessee is going to be able to pull off a victory against a top-tier opponent. Give me Tennessee at home to pull off the upset as we move on to Texas A&M. Can they bounce back? I think they can, man. I think Marcel Reed, as good of a quarterback as he is, I think this is going to be a pissed-off Bama team that has to come out with a victory. Texas A&M has struggled on both sides of the line of scrimmage. They have to replace a lot. They lost nearly their entire starting offensive line from this past year. Is Bama going to be able to take advantage of that? I think they do with the home crowd. on their side. And I think they end up in a close victory for Bama. Massive win for them as they get to the bye, preparing to go to Baton Rouge. Now we've come to the part of the schedule that is going to be interesting. I think that Week 10 game is basically a college football playoff or bust type of game for Bama and LSU at that point in the year. I think LSU will go into that game at least 6-2 with losses to either Ole Miss and or Texas A&M, because we've seen how the last couple of years have been with Marcel Reed at quarterback. But we'll get to LSU in another video. If we see both of these teams at 6-2 when they play in Baton Rouge, this is a massive game for both of them. They know the stakes are high. Loser is out of the college football playoff hunt. Or will it? Because we've heard some rumblings that this could be the first year we get a 9-3 team in the college football playoff. We'll see what happens there. But I think that this is such a revamped LSU team. I think there is a new breath of fresh air for LSU with Lane Kiffin as your head coach. Charlie Weiss against Kane Womack in a coordinator duel is going to be a lot of fun. Give me LSU to win. I think with them being in Tiger Stadium, with the crowd that gets behind them, that place is loud. I was there once on the ground covering the game. Oh, my God, I had a headache after the first quarter. It was ridiculous how loud that stadium was. But give me LSU to pull off the upset against Bama. Bama officially out of the playoff hunt. And then the rest of the three games, I think they could – look, you have a game in the Iron Bowl that always gets interesting, but let's kind of go over them a little bit. Vanderbilt on the road at First Bank. This is a rebuilding Vanderbilt team. Clark Lea's job is safe. I think that Bama is able to take care of business at the end of the day. I think that they are able to pull off a big win there. Going to Chattanooga, again, going to be nice for playing time for some of the guys that really don't get to play a whole lot. Chattanooga, I think it's going to be outmatched going into this one. I think that Bama takes care of them easily. And then Auburn for the Iron Bowl at the end of the year, the most coveted game in the state. Give me Bama to pull off a victory. I know Alex Golish and company will give them a tough time, knowing how this option game with guys like Jeremiah Cobb, who returns after a strong season this past year and was really one of the bright spots for Auburn offensively. They return only 3 starters this upcoming season, but you bring in Byron Brown, who could be a phenomenal dual threat type of quarterback. So my overall prediction for Bama, I have them 9-3, but I'm going to give you my ceiling and my floor as well. So the ceiling I have for Bama going into the season is 11-1. I do see them pulling off. They could go to Tennessee and pull off a victory. They could go to Georgia and get in, Georgia could come in to Bryant-Denny and they could handle business against that Georgia team, despite Georgia returning 14 starters. Because realistically, what has the last couple of games meant for Georgia? They were a couple of plays away from victories. If Georgia doesn't go down 35 in the first quarter of the football, or in the first half of that game, they probably take care of business. Georgia was a few missed plays away from knocking off Bama last year in Athens, a game they should have won. They had just 2 plays that could have made the difference. Honestly, this year I think it comes together for Georgia, but hey, this is going to Bryant-Denny and trying to pull off an upset there. And it's going to be in prime time, so you know it's going to be a massive deal. I just don't see a scenario where you go to Tennessee and you pull off a victory, honestly. I just don't. Because it's either going to be one of 2 things. They're going to feed off the high. You get the high off of a massive win against a team like Georgia, or people are going to start asking questions around Bryant-Denny or around Tuscaloosa. So you obviously have to think about that. The floor, I say, could be 7-5. And the two games that I really look at, two of the three teams that I think could definitely give them a loss. What happens if Will Stein's offense is able to pull it together at Kentucky? If they're 100% throughout that entire game, who's to say that Kentucky doesn't pull off a victory? They're probably one of the biggest sleepers in the SEC. And in my opinion, their floor is very low. In my opinion, they could be a team that goes 2-10 this year. Honestly, this could be a team that ends up, 2-10 this year. Their ceiling is very, very high. We'll get to Kentucky in a minute as well. I also look at a team like South Carolina who could go on the road. South Carolina has kept this close the last 2 seasons. But South Carolina has also gotten off to slow starts against Bama. They have to be better in that department. And then you look at the Iron Bowl. Who's to say that option game doesn't give Bama's defense fits? We've seen how it's affected Bama before. We'll see, man. It's going to be a fun season for Bama. I think 9-3, realistically, you're building off of a young roster that could eventually turn this team into a playoff contender once again come 2027. Let me know what you guys' thoughts are in the comment section below. Where do you have Bama at the end of the year? Make sure you all do us a favor. Hit the like, share, and subscribe button down below. Turn on the bell notifications so that you are notified every time we go live, posting a video or posting a short. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, stay blessed and don't stress. Y'all have a good week.